Hey guys, what's up? Producer engineer Alex Scott here with Consordini.com. Thank you so much for checking out another one of our review videos. Today, I am taking a look at the Eventide Ensemble Bundle of plugins, but specifically, we're going to take a look at some of the modulation effects that are included with this bundle. I love the Eventide stuff. I use it all the time. I particularly love their reverbs. They're obviously really well known for a lot of their reverb algorithms. We are going to take a look at the reverbs in this bundle in a different video. Today, I want to look at some of the more kind of modulation and spatial effects that they include. Now, Eventide, over the years, has made a lot of really, really great hardware units, like the H910, the H3000, H949, and these are all included in this bundle, which I think is just great. And what these are really great for, especially these units that we're going to take a look at here in a second, is anytime I need to spread something in my stereo field. Okay, maybe I've gotten a mix from somebody and they've just included one rhythm guitar part, one electric part. And it might sound great. It might be super, super well recorded, but in a denser mix, it might not be sitting quite right just because it's mono and I can kind of put it off to one side, or it's mono. A lot of times just single mono guitar tracks like that can be a little bit boring, and we want them to have some presence in the stereo field. Now, we can use a reverb, and that can work sometimes, but I love the ability to kind of do that old trick that creates the Haas effect where you double the track and you pan them around. But if you take that approach, sometimes you can end up with phasing issues. Now, my favorite unit and plugin that I go to for this is the H910, okay? Now, this is a model of a kind of a recreation or modeling of a vintage unit that Eventide released, I think in the late 70s, early 80s, something like that. And it's a harmonizer. So it is not necessarily just for spreading. You can do all kinds of crazy harmonizing and stuff with it. But 9 times out of 10, I just leave it on its default setting. And here is pretty much what it does. We've got an acoustic guitar track pulled up here. No compression or EQ or anything. Well recorded. Sounds like a decent mic. But again, it's just a mono mic on an acoustic. I want it to have more width. I want it to have more depth to it. We bring in our H910. And boom, we have this really amazing width, and we can mix. And really control the amount of what it's doing. Now, this is obviously applicable to all of the other parts of the unit. And we, of course, have a ton of different presets in here. It can just do so much. I don't even really want to get too much into the technical of it because it requires quite a bit of explaining, and I really just want to give you guys a general overview of these plugins. But, again, this one for me, 9 times out of 10, I just leave it on this default setting and I just use it as a stereo widener. You can, of course, use it. Its real intended purpose was to be a harmonizer and vocal doubler. It works excellently for that as well. We have a ton of presets in here, everything from really subtle doubling, or really subtle harmonization, all the way out to just totally insane spacey effects. We also have some of the artist signature presets in here, which are great. But that's the H910. Again, this thing for me, pretty much every time I pull it up, I just use it to spread because it does such an incredible job. And when you put it back in mono, when you sum it back to mono, there's never any phase issues. It just kind of goes back to sounding a lot like the original signal with a bit of a chorus on it, a mono chorus. So super, super cool with that one. The next thing, I've got a lot to get to in this bundle. The next one that I want to take a look at is the H3000. Now, the H3000, again, another hardware unit from back in the day from Eventide. This is arguably most famous for like a lot of the 90s grunge guys like Chris Cornell from Soundgarden. A lot of those records featured this unit on the vocal. This unit, if I'm getting my facts straight, in particular, Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, that great kind of stereo doubled chorus effect that he would always have on his voice comes from the H3000. And again, this thing is advanced as all get out. There's a whole patching section down here. I'm not going to get too far into the specifics on how it works. I don't honestly even understand it because it's so incredibly complex and capable. But we have literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plugins, or of presets, excuse me, in here. And then a ton of artist presets, including like Alessandro Cortini from Nine Inch Nails, Richard Devine. Like, there's some really, really, really great artist presets and producer presets in here as well. So I don't mess around too much with this actual interface. I'm sure you could spend years getting to know the whole thing. I know that it does replicate a lot of the functionality of the original. So if you're somebody out there who has used the original H3000 and you know how to menu dive and do all this stuff in it, then this would be an even more amazing tool for you to be able to use. But just in the presets here, we've got so many options. And I'm generally not like a big guy for presets. I really like to tweak things to my own taste and all that. But with plugins that get this in depth and this complicated, it's really helpful that they include, it looks like, yeah, 786 maybe different presets that we can scroll through, and they're all organized really, really well. So even if you're not a total patching or preset building wizard, or you're not familiar with this unit like me, we've got a ton of options in there that we can choose from. So also pretty similar to the H910 is the H949. That's another hardware unit. I think this is kind of a later revision or an update to the H910, and it's a very similar kind of unit in that it's a harmonizer, but we do have some delay options here, flanging, some kind of reverse delay stuff. So a little bit more of a multi-effects unit alongside your harmonization. And then we have a few other kind of more dedicated plugins in this. We do have, let's see here, our Instant Flanger and Instant Phaser, which I really, really like these. Again, emulations of old school gear, but these are a lot simpler to use. This is, your basic kind of all your basic flange options you would normally find on a flanger you have in here. The oscillation rate, whether or not we're using any enveloping, feedback, all this kind of stuff. Pretty much exactly what you would expect from a typical flanger. And then we have our Instant Phaser, which is very, very similar. This one's even simpler to use. It's just basically a phaser. So if you want to get some of those classic 70s phasing effects on your guitars or on your vocals, that is where you can find those. One other thing I want to touch on really quickly here is some of the other things that are included in this bundle that, something like this, the precision time delay. This seems like an incredibly boring piece of equipment, but this can be an invaluable tool for doing things like phase correction, for doing things like lining up samples, for doing, you can go down in your DAW down to the finest point and drag around sample by sample, but this actually lets you adjust in microseconds. Okay, so if you've got two samples, like two kick drum samples or two snare drum samples, and even going down into your DAW you can't get fine enough, you can use a tool like this to correct that. You can also do stuff where if you've got, say, room mics on a drum kit and you need them to be perfectly in phase with your audio. Sometimes your DAW editing, as fine as we can get in it, just won't quite cut it. And that's where you reach for a tool like this, where you can really get down and jerk and dirty. And I mean, again, the coarse adjustment on this time aligner is in milliseconds. That's the coarse adjustment. And then fine adjust we have down to microseconds, which is way, way, way finer of detail than you can get to in your DAW. So we've got stuff like that. We've got some cool compression and EQ options, the Omnipressor, these different EQs up here. And then we do also have Ultra Tap. Now, Ultra Tap is a delay unit. However, it can do a whole lot more than that. It also can do a lot of really cool modulation stuff. It can do some interesting sounding reverbs, tremolo, and just all different kinds of, this is based on their H9 guitar pedal, Eventide's H9 guitar pedal that does all kinds of multi-effect stuff, and this is not a plug-in emulation of that pedal, but it includes a lot of the same presets and sounds that you can get. They kind of have it split up, the H9 plugin series between a few different units. And so if you are a guitar player who's familiar with the Eventide pedals, you can definitely get into getting some of those same sounds through this as you can on that pedal. I know a lot of guitar players who have the Eventide pedals, and they absolutely love them. We also have Octave Aux here, which is a pretty intense, kind of more simplified harmonizer. Meaning, it's what it's doing is quite complex, but it's a lot easier for somebody like me, where again, on something like an H3000 or an H910, I don't know all of those really fine details on how to patch and set up the presets. This takes vocal doubling in a kind of a different direction, a much more musical direction. So I don't have a vocal track handy right now to listen to it on, but even just looking at it, you probably get the gist of what it does. Instead of doing all kinds of math to figure out what intervals, +7 semitones or -5 semitones for a fifth, we just go in here and we've got all of our musical intervals that we can assign to each voice. We can have subtle pitch variation or tuning if we would like, especially if you're trying to get stuff really dialed in with thirds and that whole Western tempered scale issue with thirds. You can get in there and correct that. You have panning controls. You have basic kind of mix function with the level of each part. And then you can also see the whole thing represented on a staff, which is incredibly handy, because I don't think in semitones, I think in chords. And so when when somebody brings me a vocal and they go, well, I really want to, I want to do a background vocal in this chorus, but I don't want to sit here and sing all 8 parts, or maybe some of the parts are out of that artist's range and we don't have time or budget to bring in an extra backup vocalist to nail some of that. I can go in and I can really create incredibly musically the different chords that I'm doing, okay? And create these harmony parts that represent the actual, maybe the voicings that a keyboard player played or something. It's just a very cool and unique way at looking at harmonization. Now, it doesn't do quite as much in the way of crazier effects or modulation as you would find in something like the H910. It's just a different kind of approach to the whole thing, and something that I really enjoy. So that's exactly what I use this for, is backing vocals. Tools like this are also incredibly handy if you do commercial work. Let's say, and I've totally used this plugin for this before, let's say you get a contract to do a jingle for a company, and they send you, maybe they got a vocalist to do a cut of the jingle, or you only have the budget to bring in the vocalist to just do the main line. Well, you can go into this and very quickly and very easily design a harmony part that sounds really convincing and sounds like a real group of singers, but doesn't require all that nuance of going in and kind of translating the music side of things to the technical side of things, which is what a lot of harmonizers do. You can just very, very easily visualize everything on a staff or in intervals, any of this kind of stuff. It makes the process way faster, way easier, and lets you get a great sound all within one plugin. So that is the Eventide, or at least a portion of the Eventide Ensemble Bundle. This is a phenomenal bundle. It's one of the more expensive subscriptions. I want to say it's somewhere between $20 and $30 a month. But for what you get in that, I really think that it's worth it. Especially the reverbs, which again we are going to cover in a separate video. The reverbs in this bundle sound phenomenal. But it gives you, on the modulation side of things, everything we've been talking about in this video, it really gives you access to some of these classic units that were used on some really great classic records that people know and love. Again, a lot of like the 90s grunge stuff, that Chris Cornell sound, some of the Nirvana stuff. When you hear that classic kind of chorused wide vocal, there's a pretty good chance it was done with one of these units. So we get to add those to our toolkit. You know, if you get a client who's really into that style of music, you can give them that same sound that they've known and loved from all those great records. And then it also just has some really practical tools like the time alignment. Octave Aux is awesome for just quick and dirty harmony vocals where you don't have to think about it too much. Just so many useful tools. So I highly, highly recommend this bundle. But what do you guys think? Have you used the Eventide stuff? Do you have any of these physical units? Do you have an original H3000 or 949? You know, what do you think of? Are there other modulation plugins that you prefer that maybe do some similar things? Whatever your thoughts may be, I would love to hear them. Please feel free to put them in the comments down below. Again, my name is Alex Scott with Consordini.com. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next one.